Tell me about where your story begins.
Well, right there in Chicago. Grew up in Chicago. My dad was an attorney who had his own business in downtown Chicago. We lived in Arlington Heights. He took the train downtown every day. In fact, he died on the way to the train one day when he was 64 years old. So I grew up in a middle-class suburban setting and took 3 steps into atheism. The first step was when I was in junior high school and I started asking the embarrassing questions about faith that all junior high schoolers like to ask. And nobody was willing to engage with me. So I figured, oh, I get it. There's no good answers. So they don't want to talk about it. So that was my first step. Second step was at Prospect High School when I was a student there. And I was taught that neo-Darwinism explains the origin and diversity of life. So God's out of a job. And then I went to the University of Missouri to study journalism. And freshman year, I took a course on the historical Jesus taught by a skeptic. And he convinced me you can't trust what the New Testament tells you. And that sort of cemented my journey into atheism. And I'm a very pragmatic person. So my attitude was, I'm not saying all atheists are like this. I'm just saying this was my perspective. I said to myself, if there is no God, if there is no heaven, if there is no hell, if there is no judgment, if there is no ultimate accountability, then the most logical way to live life would be as a hedonist. I mean, it's your one shot. You might as well soak all the pleasure you can out of life. And that's what I did. So I lived a very immoral and drunken and profane and narcissistic, self-absorbed, really in some ways self-destructive kind of a life. What people saw was me winning awards for investigative reporting because I became the legal editor of the Chicago Tribune. What they didn't see was the other side, which was me literally drunk in the snow in an alley on Saturday night. Well, I was successful at the Tribune. I have a background. I have a master's degree in law from Yale Law School. So I was successful in life, but very empty and really focused on the wrong things and hurting a lot of people in my narcissism. And so it affected our family. I remember my daughter, Allison, who was a toddler, you know, if I were, if she were playing in the living room with some toys and she heard me come home from work through the front door, her natural reaction was just to gather her toys and go in her room and shut the door. Is he going to be drunk again? Is he going to be yelling and screaming? And one day I kicked a hole through the wall in anger. Is he going to be kicking holes in walls? It's just nice and quiet in here. So, you know, this affected my family life. My wife was agnostic. She didn't know what to think about God. And then one day she met a neighbor who was a Christian and a nurse. They became best friends. She had a daughter the same age as our little daughter. And they had a lot of spiritual conversations. Leslie went to church with her. And then one day she brought me the worst news an atheist could get. She said, I decided to become a follower of Jesus Christ. And I thought, oh, no. I mean, first word that went through my mind was divorce. I was going to walk out. In fact, my first thing I did after this conversation, I was so mad, I had to mow the lawn. And she had just planted a flower bed. So I went out and I mowed down the whole flower bed in anger. So that's my mature reaction to her conversion to Christ. And then over the months, I saw positive changes, honestly, in her character and her values and the way she related to me and the kids. And it was winsome and it was attractive. But at the same time, I wanted the old Leslie back. I wanted our old life back. And so I figured, well, why don't I investigate Christianity? I'm trained in journalism and law. I could do what I did at the Chicago Tribune when I did investigative articles. I just investigate. And I'm going to try to do it honestly. I'm going to call a ball and a strike. But my hope was I could disprove it and rescue her from this cult that she's gotten involved in. So I launched on what turned out to be a nearly 2-year investigation of the evidence, focusing not exclusively, but significantly on the resurrection of Jesus, because I realized even as an atheist, that's the ballgame.